All right, well, welcome everyone. I am really pleased to have Jodi Cohen joining us today. She is the founder of Vibrant Blue Oils, and I'm sure many of you have tried her oils before because we promote it all the time. And a lot of my patients, and I know a lot of you have used it very successfully. So we're going to talk a little bit about essential oils today and a little bit about detox. So Jodi, welcome.
Oh my gosh, always a pleasure to see you and spend time with you. Yeah, I'm actually, I don't know if you know this, I had mold in my bedroom in my Seattle house, which is actually why I'm in the other one today because holy moly, I had no idea that all of the things that were going on with me were correlated with sleeping in mold. Who knew?
Oh, how about that?
Yeah, shock.
Well, mold, of course, being one of the probably more common toxins and mycotoxins that we see in people. And I swear it seems to be a building part of my practice is having people dealing with mold illness. We talk about toxicity and detoxification, and of course that applies to so many things. I mean, mold and mycotoxins being one of it, but it's chemicals and pesticides and herbicides and every other toxin on the planet. And I was saying earlier, I was did another thing for the membership about an hour ago. The average American gets exposed over 80,000 chemicals a year, and less than 200 of them have actually been studied for safety. And of course, we have no clue what happens when you start mixing and matching all these different toxins together. So we're essentially living in toxic soup, and I don't know really that there's literally anywhere in the world you can go anymore that doesn't have some element of toxicity. So yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to hear about your house.
Well,
We
I thank you. And it's fascinating because I think you're totally right. And I think what we're going to talk about today is no matter where you are, there you are. But you can like, in this house, there is a cell tower literally less than half a block away. And what I've come to realize is you cannot control, the world around you. You cannot, you can go on a fabulous vacation and gosh, you might have mold in the hotel. Oh, well, you just have to make yourself as resilient and regulated as you possibly can. And that's where I use oils because especially, the more sensitive I get, the more careful I have to be with how I heal myself. And oils are really good for sensitive people because they can be titrated, right? You can like go like this and put it away. You don't have to smell it for hours and hours. You don't have to ingest it and say like, oh gosh, maybe that wasn't my best choice and wait for it to be eliminated.
well, I would assume that a lot of people know about essential oils, at least have heard of them. Can you just talk a little bit about what are essential oils and maybe a little bit about how you started your company too?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So, the most interesting thing for me is that most of our modern medicine is derived from plants. The Native Americans taught us that white willow bark can be aspirin, valerian root can be Valium. I think it's over 50% of pharmaceutical drugs have like a plant derivative. We know from food, like ginger can be very anti-inflammatory, dill, turmeric. We know that we can kind of eat for our health. So oils are just that highly concentrated essence of the plant. Quick visual, you go out in the field, you pick the lavender, you put it in a vat. You're not going to boil the water because that will damage it. You boil the water elsewhere and kind of put the steam through, and the steam nicely distills off the constituents, the oil from the plant. And then you cool the steam, and oil and water don't mix. So the oil comes out one side and the water the other. So out of an entire vat of lavender, you might get like a liter or two of the oil. So it's that concentrated. So it's really powerful, and a little goes a very long way. And you can use these healing constituents of the plants to help return your body to balance, just as you would with food.
Yeah, what I like about essential oils too is there's so many different ways you can use them. And you
Yes.
mentioned a little bit about titrating dose. Uh, talk a little bit about, some of the ways that, people are using these oils.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the ways that you can use them, you can either ingest them, which I'm not a big fan of, not because I think it will hurt you, but mostly because I think it is more than you need. And I think at least most of the clients I work with have some kind of gut inflammation. And so digestion is suboptimal. And so I actually prefer to take advantage of the other pathways. Like, I actually think our sense of smell is our most powerful pathway, especially for all things related to the brain and the area of the brain that kind of keeps us stuck in that stress response. And also topical application. We know through hormonal creams, nicotine patches, what we put on our skin gets into our system really quickly. And if you can use it on topically applied on specific reflex points, then it carries through a whole different pathway. So, for example, one of the blends that I like for stress is our parasympathetic. And I topically apply it to the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is kind of the gear shift between the two branches of the nervous system. The sympathetic fight or flight, I see danger, I'm allocating resources towards survival, and the parasympathetic rest and digest.
Yeah, I like the flexibility of using the oils. And, for people who like, well, wait, well, you can just smell it and that's all you need. Well, remember that one of your cranial nerves, your second cranial nerve, the olfactory nerve, that's your sense of smell. It comes very superficial when you kind of go to the back of your nose. And of course, the reason we use nasal sprays is that, again, things get absorbed through that network of blood vessels in your nose very quickly. And
I know
so,
that's why they snort cocaine through the nose, or why some anesthesia is delivered that way. The mechanism of action is very effective.
yeah, so it goes up through the olfactory bulb, like you said, that's a direct connection to the brain. And in addition, by getting into the bloodstream very quickly, it can get disseminated to elsewhere in your body. So it sounds a little too simple, but the reason that you can smell it or you can put it in a diffuser. I, I,
Yeah.
I can still remember as a child, I used to have a lot of cough and congestion, and my mother used to put Vicks Vapor Rub in
Oh,
the
yeah.
vaporizer. Now the concept is the kind of the same, is that by vaporizing, it's basically menthol.
Mhm.
It is an essential oil that opens up the airway. It helps clear the congestion, helps you breathe. And I remember it always worked. And of course, she would put the slather the Vicks Vapor Rub on my chest as well.
I think we were raised in the same era.
Yeah,
I remember that as well. One thing that is really interesting to me, people don't realize that smell is critical to survival. We smell food, we smell water, we smell predator odor, we smell fire. And because it's so critical to survival, it's actually prioritized over the other senses. The
yeah,
olfactory bulb is located proximally right near the limbic bulb. And when people are kind of scanning for danger, what they're really scanning for is familiarity, right? So we all have those smells. For me, it's like fresh cut grass that reminds me of summer camp, or blackberries that remind me of, summers in Seattle, that signals safety to us. And there's some interesting research that backs this up. There's a Nobel laureate based in Seattle named Linda Buck, who was looking at the specific olfactory receptors to sense predator or sense danger. And then she was like, I wonder if there's anything that cancels this out. And it turns out it's rose. Rose oil kind of overrides and cancels out that fear response. So it's almost like, gratitude. You can't be grumpy and grateful at the same time. You can't be smelling something beautiful like rose and be terrified at the same time.
fascinating. Well, I want to talk a little bit about, using oils for detox. One of the challenges I run into a lot of my patients anyway is that, anyone with a chronic illness, I think to a certain degree, are not great detoxifiers. That's part of why they're chronically sick. So whether it's Lyme disease, autoimmune disease, whatever. And, in the effort to improve detoxification, we often find that there's a limitation because the body doesn't process things well. It's very easy to like take this pill, take this pill, take this pill. You start adding all these very well-intended supplements, herbs, and so forth, and more often than not, it kind of backfires. People don't get the kind of response we want. They're not feeling as good. I think again, if their body's already trying to keep up with getting rid of all the bad stuff, even putting in the good stuff, it's just more stuff for their body to have to process. So I think this is where essential oils can be a huge advantage because it's not a thing you have to take, like I said, orally. And you mentioned the oral route. I mean, I really don't advocate for using oral essential oils unless you really know what you're doing. You're really working with someone who understands it. A lot of the
Yeah.
essential oils can be very caustic and irritating to the GI tract, and it's easy to overdose again if you kind of don't know what you're doing. So, but again, I don't even think it's necessary for most of our purposes. Again, between smelling it and topical. But I want to talk about how can we use essential oils, and maybe we can kind of break it down on things that might be good for the liver, things that might be good for the kidneys, and so forth.
Yeah, and when we think about like how do things get from the cell to the toilet, right? What's kind of the mechanism? So first, your body needs to feel like it's safe to eliminate. If the tiger is chasing you, it doesn't really matter if you're detoxifying. You need to be in that safe parasympathetic state for the cells to even let go of the toxins. And that's actually, it's interesting. Sometimes when people start doing parasympathetic, especially people who've been chronically ill for a while, they'll say like, oh, I don't feel good. Well, here's what's happening. So the cells, it's like it's safe to come out of hiding. Winter's over, hibernation's done. And they all, all of the toxins are mobilized, but from the cell, it goes into the intracellular space, the fascia, and then into the lymph. And the lymph can get very congested at specific points. And if the lymph is congested, all of a sudden these toxins are mobilized and they're not leaving. And so this is one thing, the fascia and the lymph, I think are kind of fabulous. They do have pills for the lymph, absolutely. But, in terms of where the bottlenecks occur, it's often on the collarbones, the neck, under the armpit, the gut, especially with any kind of chronic illness, the hips, behind the knees. And oils, there are many techniques and many people who are great at telling you how to move your lymph. I always worry, and my clients worry that they might get it wrong. So just, putting an oil on greases the wheel, even if you're worried about doing it right, wrong, doing nothing else. This helps a lot. And an interesting added benefit. I don't have any cavities, but my gums, shocking, were like crime scenes, inflamed. They would bleed. I went to the dentist and didn't bleed at all. And they're like, okay, what are you doing differently? And I'm like, what am I doing right? And I was like, I think it's that I'm draining my neck. And so the toxins are able to drain. So I called up our friend Rachel Carver, who's a biological dentist, and said, could this be what's happening? She said, oh my gosh, I see it all the time. So interesting. We know the correlation between the mouth and disease. And so anything
Right.
we can do to kind of help move those toxins out of this big bottleneck area is so helpful.
So that product you were just showing, the lymph, again, I like this
Yeah.
because I think again, this is really the one part of our detox pathways. A, we don't think about enough, and B, I don't know everyone really understands how you can move the lymph. Because again, unlike your blood, that's your heart,
Yeah.
your blood, it moves your blood. Lymph doesn't have anything behind. There's no pressure. It's really based on movement. It's the contraction of muscles that moves the lymph, and your lymph vessels are very superficial to your skin. What are some of the essential oils that are in that lymph formula?
It's spearmint. Like anyone who's ever gotten a lymph massage, they always put spearmint on it because it kind
Yeah.
of vasodilates and helps with movement. Um, Vitex berry, which is actually seed, and it's great because it's grounding. What we're just hoping to do is kind of help move, if you've ever driven in traffic, like you're in 4 lanes and suddenly they're whittling it down to one for goodness knows what.
That's LA every day, by the way.
Exactly, in Seattle most days. And it's interesting because, we have to go through this narrow space. So there's backup behind. And then once we get on the other side of the narrow space, everything opens. I think that the more you can create space for fluid to flow in the body, the healthier you are. And one interesting thing, a lot of the practitioners that I work with have said that since COVID, the blood is stickier. And because the blood is stickier, the lymph is stickier. So even those that work with like professional athletes that are moving all the time are needing kind of bigger guns to help with fluid flow and fluid movement. Um, and so there's this man, Perry Nickerson, he's on Instagram. He talks about the big six. I think he does a nice job of kind of pointing out the big bottlenecks, which tend to be the clavicles, the neck. I always stimulate the vagus nerve here. That seems to help as well. The armpits, as a female who thought, who stopped wearing kind of sleeveless dresses because I just thought I was fat. No, that's congested lymph. That's lymph that's backed up. And I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm making such improvement in getting this to move. And the other thing that I really learned that I didn't know, I mean, obviously the body all works together, right? And so the fascia covers all of us. But if the fascia is like compressed, like think of it, we have a heartache, we fetal position, we brace for impact. My little dog, he's okay, but he just got attacked by a raccoon, but it was okay because he just got bit in the back. He covered his protective organs. And I think some of us, even emotionally, we like shield ourselves and then we walk around like this. And so the fascia on the back is constricted and that kind of squeezes into and impedes lymphatic flow. And so I'm a huge, huge fan of anything you can do for your fascia. Red light's great. We have this oil, if you find a good practitioner, cherish them forever. They're hard to find, but just all of kind of the little hidden variables that I didn't realize are impeding the ability of my body to eliminate things.
Yeah, and I think if you combine that with things like dry brushing, and if you've got
Yeah,
access to a sauna, these are another
yeah,
great ways to move your lymph. So again, this can be a really either standalone therapy or a nice adjunct is a way to
yeah.
get the lymph to move. And you're right, so many chronic toxic issues may just be as simple as your lymph isn't moving as well as it should. And again, I like this as it's a very simple, really straightforward way of being able to get that flow to start moving. Um,
Well, and even I think certain toxins might hang like when I started doing a heavy metal detox, I noticed a lot going on with my back. Like it was interesting. It wasn't just taking like certain chelation supplements. It was actually doing a lot of drainage daily with oils, like all the tools you mentioned. I like the idea of, see people like you and your specialist and then go home and do your home practice. You're not only brushing your teeth when you go to the dentist, you do it, most of us do it every day, twice a day, sometimes 4 times a day.
Good point. Yeah, I'm not going to come home and brush your teeth for you.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
so that kind of covers some of the lymph. Liver and gallbladder are another really big piece of
yeah.
detoxification. What kind of essential oils would be useful in getting the liver to move that bile? Because the bile is what holds a lot of, once your body comes across a toxin, it conjugates in the liver, it binds it up to something else, it gets in the bile, and that's what ultimately carries it out through the gut. So, what
Yeah,
are
we
some?
actually, so we have two blends for the liver. One that helps with the liver vitality and the function of the liver and movement, and one that kind of helps with the emotional aspect of the liver. I think it was Kelly Kennedy who taught me when you're, that time of month for women when we're like, you know, the liver.
No, I don't know that at all.
Keep it that way. You're so lucky. Um, but even blood is detoxifying and moving things. And so sometimes the liver in Chinese medicine is correlated with anger. And so when the fluid starts flowing, that emotion starts flowing. And so the oils in our liver support blender are really nice to kind of help calm those intense emotions. And the other thing that I'm curious what you think about this, but I've heard that with all kind of organ systems, you're working on the physical organ, right? Like maybe you have glandulars or whatever support, but then if you're not touching the emotional piece, you have to kind of unpack that as you go. It's almost like a three-legged race. And so that helps you to support both of those factors of the liver.
Well, it's interesting in other system of medicine like Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, they always talking about emotional or an emotion that's directed to very specific organs. And so like in Chinese medicine, the lungs, I think, are associated with grief, the kidneys are associated with fear, the liver is associated with anger. And often we'll see that correlation of how people kind of present physically versus what's actually going on underneath. So again, this can be another way to, I guess, emotionally detox, right? Isn't that the
Yeah.
term that
Well, and
we use?
even like our limbic reset, it's really high in oils that have the constituent sesquiterpene. Basically, we put the most expensive oils in one blend, so to save you money. So like Melissa, sandalwood, helichrysum, but smelling it or even applying it, Dr. Christine Schaffner was telling me the emotion points are kind of on the temples, and sometimes when someone is having, the emotions are kind of influencing their health, either they're driving the chronic stress response, she'll just have them topically applied or put their hand on their forehead. you know we do that when we have a headache, right? We're just bringing heat, bringing energy, helping to kind of move and release stuck stagnant energy there.
Are there certain oils that you find are better than others at like moving bile?
Yeah, we have a gallbladder blend that's great. It's like Roman chamomile and cumin and things like that. That one's so interesting to me. Like, I really do trust the intuition of the body, and like when something smells good to you, you usually need it. So that blend smells fabulous to me when I need it, and when I don't need it, it's like that time of month. Sometimes women will crave chocolate because we need magnesium, or when I was pregnant, I don't think I've ever eaten more hamburgers because I needed the iron. Like we intuitively are drawn to what we need. And that one, for me, when I was kind of going through my fun gallbladder experience, it would present either as sharp pain on the right side of the body under the breast where the gallbladder is located, pain between the shoulder blades, motion sickness, or kind of a mild headache here. If I had a headache and I was like, oh, it's my forehead, I'm like, I bet that's a gallbladder thing. And so that was kind of a one bottle experience. I would just smell it or topically apply it over the gallbladder or one of the gallbladder meridian points.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm like, is there an advantage of applying these oils over the organ itself?
Yes.
Or, yeah,
Yeah, I think for a number of reasons. I think energetically, the resonance, one way I was trying to think about it, trying to teach a kid to ride a bike, it's such a weird combination of skills, right? You're balancing, you're moving, and it's not like you can really explain it. It's much more kinesthetic. They have to feel it. So, you put the training wheels on or you run along behind them. And some kids, it takes like 2 seconds. Some kids, it takes 2 years. It's really about when they feel it in their own body. And so I think when we topically apply the oils over the organ, it's almost like, the training wheels. It's putting that organ in balance. And so it's like, oh, yes, this is what healthy function feels like. And it just starts to return to a healthy state.
what about the kidneys? Anything specifically that can help? Because again, like mycotoxins, most of the mycotoxins actually get excreted through the kidneys, not the bowels. So depending on what the toxin is, some get better excreted through the kidneys, some through the bowels, some through the skin. So what is there that might help improve kidney function?
Yeah, we have three that can be helpful. Parasympathetic, because the vagus nerve sends signals to the kidneys. Then we have a kidney support blend, which was originally designed to kind of support the emotion of fear. But I find that that actually helps with kidney function. It's so interesting. Most people know the kidneys are about the size of your fist and sit on your low
Yeah.
back, and your adrenals, which release all those hormones, when we are afraid, sit right on top. And again, I think proximity plays a role in function. And so my mom actually just went through something like knock wood. I think we're on the other side, but I was having her apply the kidney blend, the adrenal blend, and the parasympathetic, and we tweaked her diet a little bit. And her labs corrected.
It's funny. I remember being in gross anatomy the first time I actually saw a human kidney. I was shocked at how small it was. I
Yeah.
guess I always visioned as a kid that your kidneys were kind of big and they take up most of your back. Yeah, I mean I'll say even at least my fist smaller than my fist. They're actually much smaller than you would probably expect, but they do so much work and
Yeah.
important in getting rid of a lot of toxins. What about through the skin? Again, skin's another way that we get rid of a lot of stuff. Are there any essential oils that might be better with perfusion, more bringing more blood flow to the skin so at least it's easier to sweat it out?
No, absolutely. I mean, I love adding oils to Epsom salt baths. That's kind of one of my favorite ways to do it. The other thing I've been playing with, being 55 is so fun because you get all these new challenges that you never had before, and
Right there with you.
menopause. And the thing that like I had heard, I have dry skin, so acne was never my thing, but some of the women on my team love our anti-inflammatory blend. They put it on the bottom of the feet before bed and it clears up the skin. So one thing for me with menopause is suddenly I'm inflamed in places that I never was before. So I've been putting this on the bottom of the feet before bed. It's unbelievable. I don't have restless leg, but sometimes like my knee would hurt. It's so weird, getting older and like waking up more and all these things. All of a sudden I'm sleeping through the night. I have no pain. I like everything seems to be better. So the bottom of the feet is one of my favorite application points for a number of reasons. A lot of our clients, their spouse doesn't like smells, so I joke that we save marriages. You could just put things on the bottom of the feet and then put socks on. Also, the skin is thicker. So if you're going to have any kind of reaction, it's very unlikely that you would
Yeah.
the bottom of the feet. And all of the reflex points are on the bottom of the feet. We have foot charts that we can share. The reality is, I mean, you can be ridiculously specific, like the big toe is kind of correlated with the brain, but you don't need to get it exactly right. Anything is good.
Yeah, I have a lot of parents too that use these with their kids, and again, they'll put them on the bottom of the feet because they get too close to their face. Sometimes that it's too strong, they get irritated, whatever. But bottom of the feet's pretty easy. Kids don't mind,
Yes.
and I know it seems like really you just put them on the bottom of your feet. That's it. I'm like, yeah, again, it doesn't have to be that complicated. It can really be that simple.
Well, the other thing that I learned from Deanna Hansen, who does block therapy,
Yeah.
fascia gets really constricted. It's like wrapping in all these directions between the toes. I just roll on the fascia. I'll show you the fascia release blend, and then try to kind of separate my toes at night. That's been kind of amazing. Sometimes I do it. I'm a little bit impatient. So in yoga, when they have you like sit on the block and
Yeah.
meditate or breathe or whatever, I'm like, okay, I'll do that and I'll multitask. I'll like just separate out the toes. But anything that we can do, I think, to create more space so that the good things can get in and the bad things can get out. We're just trying to open space in the body for healing and detoxification.
So if people haven't really tried essential oils before, I mean, I like your company for a lot of reasons. You got
Oh.
clean, organic oils, but you've got companies out there, and again, not to say anything bad about anyone else, but like Young Living and doTERRA and a lot of the sort of multi-level marketing, what differentiates a good essential oil from maybe a not so good one?
I mean, when in doubt, buy organic because they're concentrated. And so you don't want concentrated pesticides. What I do that I think is different is a lot of those companies have all the raw materials and then they give you the recipes to blend it yourself. A lot of my clients are worried about getting it wrong or they're not quite sure what to do. So I take the guesswork out. I just create the ready-made blends and tell you exactly how to use them and work with practitioners like you who are treating chronically ill clients and finding success. Just one less thing to have to guess or worry about, or oh gosh, did I do that right? I just want to make it as easy as possible.
Cool. That's very, I've really appreciated you and the company. And again, I know a lot of my patients and a lot of other people have commented how well they've done. And well, I don't have it in front of me right now, but I've got the parasympathetic blend. I love it. Again, I find it helps with my sleep. If I start to feel stressed out, I'll just do a couple of sniffs under the nose, and it doesn't take very long to start to feel the effect. And that's the other thing I guess you should mention, that it's not one of these things that you often have to take for a long, long period of time to see if it's helping. I mean, these things get absorbed pretty quickly. And I've seen people, again, when they're like stressed out, they'll tell me within 5, 10, 15 minutes of either applying the oil, sniffing the oil, they start to feel that shift. So, sometimes even if you take if you take a theanine for anxiety, well, maybe it takes 20, 30 minutes to feel the difference. This could be 5 minutes. So they tend to
Yeah.
work quite quickly.
Very, very, very quickly. No, I agree. I mean, it's interesting. I used to joke, when the kids are little and it's like fire drill after fire drill, like I was always kind of like, one heartbeat away from an anxiety attack. And so just putting this on, I could function. I wouldn't have my panic attack. I'm like, okay, I'm good. I got this.
Well, I'd love to open it up to questions for anybody who's here live. If you've got a question, there's not very many of us, so I think if you want to just open up your camera and your mic, you could just ask Jodi the question directly. Or if you want, you can type it into the Q&A and I'm happy to read the question out as well.
Yeah. It's funny, Darren, my dogs don't like everyone. They clearly like your voice. They keep wanting to say hi.
Hey, so I've never used essential oils at all, and
I
this
don't
is
know.
um interesting. So when somebody buys oils from your company, do you give specific instructions and
Yes, we have.
where, uh, like on your website, does it explain a lot of what you just explained?
Yes, each product page has kind of a use sheet, a video where we demonstrate it, very detailed explanation of all the ingredients, what they do. I try to be as proactive and transparent as possible just because I like that kind of information. And then we have a customer service team in case you have any specific questions or concerns. We try to make it as easy as possible.
Great. Maybe Dr. Ingels and I can talk about that on our next appointment.
Yeah, so you can
Yeah.
always talk with your doctor if there's questions, or at least make sure your doctor knows about plants and essential oils. If you go to your primary care doctor at Kaiser, they probably aren't going to know very much about it. But if you're working with a functional medicine naturopathic doctor, there's a good chance that they'll have an idea about what to do and how to dose it.
Michael has a good question. How many layers of skin depth do essential oils dive through on the thinner and thicker skin areas? You know, it's interesting. Like so carrier oil, we didn't really talk about that. Carrier oil kind of makes a difference to how quickly and how deep it goes, right? So we use fractionated coconut oil because it penetrates really quickly and has a kind of an immediate reaction. Castor oil is more of a slow time release that kind of carries it into deeper layers. I use this, it's interesting. I'm pretty sure that this is more effective for the superficial lymph, but the fascia, I feel like it's also what oils are in it. This one seems to carry deeper. And the other thing that I've been playing with, Stephanie Canistero recommended this. It's my new favorite toy. It's called a Flex Beam, and it's like a red light therapy. And they've got 3 levels. One is kind of superficial, one is deep, and one is kind of mid. And I do believe I have noticed in myself, because with fascia, my indicator is pain or tightness, that this seems to help it drive in even deeper. What things can be paired with essential oils to drive the medicine as deep as possible? Castor oil would be my pick. And I would honestly do it at night because that's kind of when you have more time and you heal during sleep. If you're very disabled with fatigue and a bad detoxifier, what would you do besides parasympathetic? I would do the lymph and the fascia first, just to kind of open the pathways. Someone said something to me recently that I thought was so clean and so articulate. They were like, if a remedy that should work doesn't work, it's either that you need something before or something with it, right? So, to both of these points, if you're a bad detoxifier, I would definitely start with lymph. I would make sure that your lymph is flowing and draining. And we didn't talk about, I'm a fan of binders. I think that helps to pull toxins out. I'll let Darin speak to that too. But then, with like castor oil makes it much more of a slow time release, especially when you're sleeping. It's great at night.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you've got to go really low and slow and figure out for people who are bad detoxifiers. I mean, I'm always questioning, are you a bad detoxifier because you're genetically disposed that way? Or is just because you've got so much stuff to process and there's just a limit to how much your body can do at once? Because I see often is that people start on some detox regimen and again, it kind of backfires and they feel worse. So, again, is there an underlying nutritional issue that has to be addressed first? I mean, I'll start with something simple, even like, trisalts, which is just a bicarbonate formula to help people kind of start to alkalize their pH. We know that on a cellular level, your cells function best in an alkaline pH. You're really only acidic in your skin, your stomach, your bladder, and the vaginal area for women to protect against outside of the invaders, and the rest of your body's more or less alkaline. So sometimes it's as easy as just shifting, your intracellular pH so that your cells function better and you can actually start detoxifying well on your own before you start jumping and other things. But, even with like essential oils for people who are really sensitive, we'll start at really low doses. Instead of, you know, 2 rubs, it might be 1 rub. And again, I think I like the thicker skin because again, the absorption will be a little bit slower on the thicker skin than the thinner skin. So just finding those little things, you kind of have to establish tolerance first before anything else. And then as you feel like you tolerate it, then you can start increasing the dose as needed. Michael also asked here, are there certain carrier oils that almost cancel out or mitigate the extent of the essential oils? So basically, would some carrier oils be better than others to help the essential oil get better absorbed?
I'm a big fan of fractionated coconut oil and castor oil. There are a variety of them. I mean, how do I say this? Um, that isn't something that I've done a deep dive on because I kind of found what works, and so I stick to it. Some people like sesame oil, some people like almond oil. I don't know that it would cancel anything out. I'm not so concerned about that. If you want my honest opinion, I actually think just smelling things is so powerful. You know, I mentioned when we got on that I just mitigated mold in my house. And so much of mold, you know, and the mycotoxins are in the nasal passageways. And so I've been actually putting a little bit on Q-tips and either swabbing around the inside of the nose. We have both a histamine blend and a sinus support blend, or just like really gently, not in an irritating way at all, but kind of leaving the tooth or the Q-tips in there. It's been life altering. Like I think a little goes a long way. So you don't necessarily need to worry about diluting it and what you're using because you need so little, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they don't make it anymore. I'm trying to remember. Jody, you might remember the company. They used to make something called Naso Simpatico.
That's what our sinus support blend is. Amy Dirksen asked me to make that, so that's what that is. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, so this company used to make it. What we used to do is it was a mix of, I think, 4 essential oils. I think it was
It's
thyme.
lavender, peppermint. I have it in the other room, two more, but yeah.
I think it's maybe thyme and eucalyptus.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. So we used to dip in these very long swabs, and for people that get chronic sinus congestions, even like sinus infections, you would take a swab, you would dip in the oil, and then you would stick it kind of as far back as you can go. It sounds really weird. It's not terribly uncomfortable, believe it or not. And because you've got 3 openings up in your nasal passages. So you would thread one in the top area, the middle, and the bottom. And then you would just leave it there for about 10 minutes on both sides. People have all these sticks coming out of their nose, and then we would pull them out, and afterwards people would just blow all this
Yeah.
massive amount of mucus and gunk, and all that stuff that was stuck up in the sinuses in the head would just start pouring out, because you've got things that are opening up the blood vessels, killing off bugs that might be up there. And it was incredibly helpful. And then for whatever reason, I think the FDA actually stopped them from selling that particular product. But that's good to know that your science blends are replication of that.
Yeah, no, and I mean, having lived through mold remediation, I have to say that works like nothing I've ever experienced. It's amazing. If you were to intuit, how exactly do oils shift the subtle and non-subtle energy of that particular area? Basically, what I think it does is it shifts it into homeostasis, right? Like someone told me that planes, it's not like they're flying, you know, from Seattle to New York. It's like minor course corrections the whole route, right? We do this all the time. We're in yoga, we kind of correct our pose. I think what oils do is they kind of help the body return to balance.
Yeah. You know what, Jody, let me pull up here. Someone's asking about what your company is. Let me pull up your website.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, and the ones that I think are really powerful that I don't think other people are doing, it's the 3 in our vagus nerve kit. So parasympathetic, which you topically apply on the mastoid bone, and that helps you shift into the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. Fascia release, which is like, you know, when I first started talking, I started the company 12 years ago, and I was talking about the vagus nerve, and people were like, "You mean like gambling?" And I'm like, "No." You know, people hadn't heard of it. Now it's pretty common. I think that fascia is the new wild, wild west. I think that the fascia, the lymph, and the nervous system all work together. And fascia is kind of unbelievable for me. You know, I tell people put it wherever it hurts, but I often put it on the back of my neck. I bring it into, this is an overshare. I bring it into yoga with me, and sometimes, you know, we'll be doing like heart opening, and I'm like, oh dear, put it on the back of my heart. That helps, you know. Oh, hip opening. Okay, put it on my hips. It seems to like grease the wheels and make everything go better.
Here, let me just share real quick your website just so people can get a look.
Okay, thank you.
So hopefully you can all see. This is Jody's website. So it's Vibrant Blue Oils. And you'll see it's broken down by different categories. So she's got different kits. She's got her top sellers. Here's the one like on detox. If I click on detox, there's
Yeah.
things that come up. So here's the one for gallbladder, kidney support, liver support. You got a detox support kit, like I said, which is liver, gallbladder, parasympathetic, lung support,
Michael,
lymph.
you should buy my book, Essential Oils to Boost the Brain and Heal the Body. It has all of the research. Actually, Darin, I just before I got on there, publishing it in Hungarian.
Oh,
I
wow,
know, right?
fantastic.
The best thing about like writing a book, you publish the book and then the publishing house, Random House says like, oh, someone else wants to pick it up. But do you know what positive physical reaction the body sets off once it receives an essential oil application? It depends, like peppermint, there's a lot of research that it vasodilates. In fact, Detice Karazian adds peppermint to all of his supplements because it helps, open the pathways so that things can be more delivered. So it's different by each individual oil. And there's a lot of great information in there.
Yeah, and if you're someone who geeks out on this kind of stuff, you can go to PubMed.
Yeah.
PubMed is the national database where pretty much all research gets published, and you can do a search and you can type in essential oils and in capital letters, and what that does is that connects your search terms and lupus and migraines and whatever, and it'll do a search for any research that's ever been published on those specific topics. So you can kind of play around with different search words to see. But I hear this a lot around different botanical things, whether it's essential oils, tinctures, raw herbs. Oh well, there's really no research and da da da. They don't do a ton of research in the U.S., but they do elsewhere in the world. In Germany and China, Japan, a lot of Asia, where herbs are more widely used, there they do invest money and they do research on a lot of these plants and the extracts and the essential oils. So it's kind of interesting. I think American scientists often get turned off when they see research coming from other countries, but it's no less valid that it was done in the UK if it was done in the US. But often you'll find there is quite a bit of information out there on the mechanisms of what they do chemically, what they're doing physiologically. So yeah, it's not just a bunch of woo-woo,
Oh, no, not at all. Especially, there's a lot of research on sleep and kind of the sedative properties, antibacterial, antifungal. There's a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, this is actually pretty well researched in a lot of the world. And again, there's no shortage of information out there if that's something you want to do deep dive. But again, I'd recommend get Jodi's book. Again, there's other really great books out there too if you want to know more about using essential oils. Like I said, Jodi's kind of taken the work off your shoulders because a lot of the blends already include things and the names are pretty self-explanatory of what
That
they
was
do.
the
You
goal.
really don't know, but yeah, I would definitely encourage everyone to check it out.
Thank you so much. It was great to meet you all.
Yeah, thanks, Jodi. I really appreciate your time. And again, thank you everyone who came on live. And for those of you watching the replay, I hope you enjoyed it. And again, check out Jodi's website, and then maybe Mary Agnes and we can talk, and maybe we can offer a little something for the members here
Oh,
too.
absolutely. I will get right on that. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
All right, great. Thanks, Jodi.
Enjoy your afternoon. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.